excited about sharing this recipe with you. I almost thought I wasn't going to be able to make this. I'm going to make a rhubarb strawberry coffee cake, and I've been having a hard time finding rhubarb. I dream of someday having a patch of rhubarb that I can grow here on the farm, but like I've mentioned before, we've only been here for a little over a year and a half, and that's just something we haven't gotten to. So I kept going to Whole Foods and looking for it. None of the other stores had it, and Whole Foods said they carried it, but every time I went they didn't have any. And so the season is almost over, and I went there last week, a couple days ago, and I said if they don't have it this time, then I'm going to scratch the recipe, and they had a big basket of it there. So I'm excited about that. So no, I'm not going to use this huge amount of rhubarb in one coffee cake, but because it is seasonal and it's a short season, I love to slice it into 1-inch slices and just throw it in my deep freeze, and then I can enjoy rhubarb desserts. I have about 3 different rhubarb desserts that I love to make. This one is one of our favorites. So it's a coffee cake with a rhubarb strawberry filling. So we're going to get started with making the filling, and then I'm going to set that aside and we'll make the cake, and then we'll make the topping, and then we'll put it all together. I've already washed these. I've already washed my strawberries, so I'm just going to cut them up and get them into a saucepan. Now before I cook these, I am going to put my strawberries into a bowl, and I'm going to mash them a bit, and then I'll add them into a saucepan with the rhubarb. Then we're going to add some lemon juice, not much, a couple tablespoons, and I'm going to put the lid on it and let it just kind of simmer and break down the rhubarb. Especially the strawberries will break down pretty quick, especially if I mash them, but we want to break down that rhubarb. So I'm just going to give these, just mash them for a couple minutes by hand before I put them in a saucepan. Alright, so we have the strawberries and the rhubarb and the lemon juice over medium heat, and we're just going to let this simmer for about 5 minutes. We do want to cover it. Alright, so it's nice and bubbly, and now I have mixed together some cornstarch and sugar, and I'm just going to add it all to the pot at one time. I'm going to mix that in. I'm going to turn up the heat just a little bit, and I'm going to bring this to a boil, stirring it constantly, and it's going to thicken really nice. And once it comes to a boil and it thickens, then we're going to take it off the heat and set it aside. See, it's becoming really nice and thick. Yep. Okay, so we're going to mix up the batter for our coffee cake, and it's pretty simple. It's got quite a few ingredients, but it's pretty simple. So it's just going to be some flour, sugar, baking powder, baking soda, and salt, and then you're going to cut cold butter into it until it's crumbly, and then we're going to mix up some eggs, crack some eggs into our buttermilk, add some vanilla, mix it up, and pour it in, and just whisk it till it's nice and smooth. So that's all there is to making the batter. and then we're going to make a crumble topping. So I'm going to go ahead and put the batter together. Alright, so this is finished. What you're going to want is this kind of like a coarse meal. It's just nice and mixed in. There might be a few butter clumps. You can kind of go ahead and feel throughout it and break them up if you need to. But this is pretty much what you're looking for. So I've got my buttermilk, and now I'm just going to crack 2 eggs into it. Add some vanilla, and I'm going to beat it well. And then we'll add it to those dry ingredients. Now you're just going to want to mix it in to your dry ingredients and mix it really well. So the last step before we assemble the coffee cake is to make the crumble topping that goes on top. So I have some melted butter, I have some flour, and some sugar. I'm just going to mix those up until they're crumbly. I'll do it with a spoon, but then you can kind of do it with your hands to feel if they're crumbly. And then that will be done. That's really super easy to make. So then we're going to layer up the batter with the rhubarb strawberry filling and the crumble topping, and we'll get it all put together and into the oven. So we're just about done making this. See, if you take your hands, you can tell it will just crumble really nice on top. So you don't want to mix it to where it could turn it into more of a batter or like real solid. You could make this into a ball, but if you're just really gentle with it, you will be able to use it as a sprinkle topping over the top. We're ready to assemble our coffee cakes. So something fun that I do is I don't always follow the directions when it calls for the baking pan that you're going to put it in. The original recipe for this called for making it in a 9x13. And I get kind of tired of always making a coffee cake or cornbread or whatever, or like always making it in a 9x13, and you don't have to. If you were to look up how many cups a 9x13 casserole pan holds, it's about 12 to 14, I think is what it says. A 9-inch pie plate holds 6 to 7 cups. So when you have a 9x13 casserole pan, one casserole pan is equivalent to 2 9-inch cake pans. So if you were making a cake, say like a carrot cake, and it said to put it in a 9x13, you could put it in a 9x13, or you could put it in 2 round cake pans. They both hold the same amount. So this is a 9-inch pie plate, and they're so pretty, and I think that like sometimes it would be pretty to use something different than a 9x13 casserole pan. So I'm going to go ahead and make it into 2 rounds. And then the filling, I have noticed in times past that when I've made this, I haven't always used up the full amount of sauce. It's the strawberry rhubarb sauce. And so if you feel like the coffee cake is getting too full with this, then you don't have to use it all. Usually what I'll do, and I can't really figure out the amounts, that would make the perfect amount for this recipe. I just kind of found that the amounts that the original recipe gave me, it made a little bit too much filling, but I don't know how to break it down to make the perfect amount. And I don't really need to, because I love this filling. And whatever I don't use, I just put into a quart-size freezer bag and I stick it in my freezer, and this sauce is wonderful on top of pancakes and waffles. So I never really concerned myself with trying to figure out the right amount for this. I just use it until I think I have enough, and whatever I have left I just stick into the freezer for later. So what we're going to do is we're going to put, since we are doing 2 pie plates, the original recipe says 2, which I'll put this on the recipe card as a 9 by 13. You would take half of this batter and you would put it in the bottom of a 9 by 13, and then you're going to put your rhubarb filling, and then you're going to take the rest of the batter and you're going to drop it by spoonfuls on top of the rhubarb filling. And then once you're done with that, you're going to put all the crumble crust on top of that. And if you would like, you could sprinkle raw sugar or real coarse sugar over the top of everything. But since I'm doing it in 2 pie plates, then I'm going to have to adjust for that. I'm only going to use 1/4 of the batter in each one, and then I'll put the filling, and then I'll put the rest of the batter on top. So I'll go ahead and make one, and then on the second one I'll bring the camera in and you can just watch me make the second one straight down, so you can kind of get a visual of what we're going to do. So I'll just set this one aside for now, and then I'll just have to eyeball it. I think I'm just going to make a nice layer in the bottom. And as I was preparing this batter and the creme topping, I had the filling that we had made, the strawberry rhubarb filling, and I took it out of the pot because that was keeping it really, really hot. It's just easier to work with it when it's cooled down a bit. So I took it out of the pot and put it into a glass bowl, and then I stirred it periodically as I was making the other stuff. It's just easier if it's not piping hot. So you'll know when you're making this what's too much, what's just a nice layer. You really don't want to just keep piling it in there. Now, if you've never had rhubarb, it is more of a tart taste, sour tart. But it's really, I don't know, it's a super delicious flavor, but it's very tart. And so that's why you need the sugar in here, and it pairs really well. Rhubarb and strawberries go really well, but strawberries can be a bit tart as well, so that sugar really helps sweeten it up. I'm just going to put spoonfuls of this, so when it's done cooking, there's baking powder and baking soda in here, but so it will rise up a bit, but some of that filling will kind of ooze out from between everything, and it'll be really, really pretty, because then you've got the crumble topping, so it'll be kind of a mixture of textures, and like the batter, the filling, and the crumble topping. It'll all be kind of mixed up together on the top, and it'll just be really beautiful. So I think I'll stop with that, and then I'm going to grab some of this crumble topping and just really load it on there. I don't have any coarse sugar. I ran out and I keep forgetting to put it on my list, but that would be really pretty. A white, you could do raw, that's a more brown color. I would probably go more with a white coarse sugar, but it would be super pretty. Right before I started putting these together, I did preheat my oven to 350, so it's ready for me to put these in. And as always, I put something like this on a cookie sheet, and you can put foil or parchment paper on the cookie sheet so that if this does bubble up and spill over, you're not going to have to clean up your whole oven. And then the foil on the cookie sheet, you wouldn't even have to clean your cookie sheet. So go ahead, and once your oven is preheated, place these out here. I believe they're going to take around 30 or 40 minutes, and it's going to be very bubbly, and this is going to be crispy, and you'll know they're done just by looking at them. It's really, really easy to tell because it's not a lot of thick batter. If you notice, the bottom batter, it was only about this thick, so it's not going to take that long to cook that. And then the top is just spoonfuls, so it's not like a big thick cake. And as you see, I had a lot of the strawberry rhubarb left over. That would be an incredible amount of filling, I think, on this coffee cake. It'd be very, very soupy. And so I never could figure out what was the perfect amount, and like I said, I didn't really need to, because now I can put this over waffles or strawberries, or even strawberry shortcake with whipping cream, maybe in a little hand pie. There's so many things you could do with this, so I don't really worry about if I make too much. So now I have 2 coffee cakes, and I'll have a tray of the leftover rhubarb. I flash froze it. I put it on a tray and stuck it in the freezer, so that will be frozen. So that'll be waiting for me when I want to make something else that's rhubarb. And then I have this. So it's a really great recipe to do, and to really be able to enjoy the rhubarb while it's in season. So I'm going to go pop these in the oven, and I will be back when they are done cooking. Well, the coffee cake has been in the oven for about 40 minutes. And when I stuck a toothpick in, it came out dry, and it's risen nicely, and it's very toasty and beautiful looking. So they are finished, and I'll bring the camera in close so that you can take a look in just a minute. But I love to, when things are in season, I love to be able to go and purchase the produce when it comes into the market in season, or when it's coming out of the garden, and make some of our favorite recipes with them. But then I always like to get some abundance and get it frozen and into the freezer so that you can enjoy things like this year round. So if you want to make this recipe, go ahead and click the link below, and you will be able to pick up the printable recipe with all the ingredients and directions found there. So there you have it. That is the most delicious rhubarb strawberry coffee cake that I have found. I just absolutely love this recipe, and I know that you guys are going to want to try it. So go ahead and pick up that recipe in the link below and make yourself some of this while rhubarb and strawberries are still in season. And if you found this recipe helpful, I would love it if you would give me a thumbs up, and go ahead and share it with a friend, somebody else that you think might want to try this coffee cake. And go ahead and subscribe and click that little bell so that you will be notified every time I bring something to my channel. I focus on whole, fresh, in season, fresh out of the garden or the farmer's market, in season food, and I just bring a lot of delicious recipes, a lot of techniques that help you successfully make baked goods, and I just have a lot of delicious content, so you're not going to want to miss any of it. So go ahead and subscribe, and we'll catch you next week.